Okay, hello students, and welcome to this video where I'd like to work our way through the primary source document. Rome's Perfect Location, written by Marcus Tullius Cicero, otherwise just known by Cicero, one of the most famous orators and speechwriters in Rome's history. And he makes no bones about Rome, pretty much being perfect. So I'm not going to type and work through each one of these words and context clue definitions and dictionary definitions. And I might go and talk about at least the key concepts of each of these uh, paragraphs. And I would like to just talk a little bit about these questions at the end. So let's go to the document itself. And let's take a look at the intro. It says that one of the reasons why Rome flourished was its sheltered location. We know it was 15 miles inland from the Mediterranean. Also, we know that it was between trade routes as well. So here's Cicero going to town about Rome. The location that Romulus chose for the city was unbelievably favorable, for he did not move his city down the coast, a step very easy for him to take with the forces at his command, either by invading the territory of the Rutuli or of the Aborigines, so those are two groups that lived further down the coastline, or by himself founding a city at the mouth of the Tiber. But with the singular foresight, Romulus saw and divined that a location upon the seaboard was not the most advantageous for cities intended to enjoy permanence and imperial sway. Let's just stop right there. Foresight means you can see into the future, all right? And so he realized that the place that he was going to divine, like the place that he was going to pick, that this location was not on the seaboard, was not the most advantageous, because cities that are on the sea do not enjoy permanence and imperial sway, which means they're not there forever, and that they do not have this, like, imperial sway would be like a far-reaching governmental power. So if I were doing this, divine would be the first word I'd highlight. I'd also probably would have highlighted permanence here, and then also maritime. Divine means almost like magical insight, seeing into the future. Permanence means something that lasts forever, and maritime means something that's connected to the sea. So he's saying that if you're connected to the sea, if you're a coastline city, you're exposed to dangers that are impossible to foresee. And so then he goes and he talks about why you should be surrounded by land on all sides. So he says a city surrounded on all sides by land receives many warnings of an enemy's approach, such as the crashing of the forest and even the noise of marching troops. No enemy, in fact, can arrive by land without enabling us to know both his hostile intent and who he is and whence he comes, meaning like from where he comes. On the contrary, an enemy who comes by ships over the sea may arrive before anyone can suspect his coming, and indeed, when he appears, he does not show by any signs who he is, whence he comes, or even what he wants. And so, let's just talk about, I guess, what I would put for the main idea of this paragraph. So, do I still have that back here? I do. So if I were writing this with my team, the key idea, key concepts of this first paragraph, and we could break this down, is that Cicero is saying that inland is much better than the coastline for defensive purposes in this chapter. In this paragraph. Because you can hear a large army marching through the woods. You can hear a large army coming across land. You're going to have time to view a large army. Even if you don't hear it, you're going to see it and know it's coming. You're going to put scouts all along the trail or road that leads from the port city of Ostia, the 15 miles inland toward Rome, all along the Tiber River. If your city is on the coastline, you don't know what's in the ships that are coming. You think they are goods to trade with merchants. But what he's saying here in this last line, he says he could arrive before anybody suspect he's coming, so you can come quietly at night with a large fleet of ships. Or if you do show up, you might not have, you might have a merchant flag, or you might disguise your warship to look like merchant ships. And by the time you get into the harbor, it might be too late. And so he's saying that we have the advantage of having a little bit of a buffer zone between us and the Mediterranean Sea. All right, let's look at the second paragraph. It says, in addition, cities located on the sea, oh boy, if you have any strong feelings about immigration or like pure cultures, this paragraph's going to get you going. In addition, cities located on the sea are subject to certain corrupting influences and to moral decline. They are affected by alien forms of speech and by alien standards of conduct. Now, when he's saying alien here, he doesn't mean like alien, like outer space aliens. He means people that aren't Roman. Not only foreign merchandise is imported, but also foreign codes of morals, which the result that nothing in the ancestral customs, which result that with the result that nothing in the ancestral customs of a maritime people can remain unchanged. The inhabitants of the seaboard do not remain at home, but are tempted far from the cities by the hope and dream of swiftly gained wealth, and even when they remain at home in body, they are exiles and wanderers in spirit. So I did like highlight ancestral, and it's the traditions sent down by the people that are older than you and your family. So it's things taken from your parents and your grandparents, your ancestors. And then, of course, exiles is a word that's maybe a little unusual, but exiles are people that just are banned or barred from their home countries. So what is he saying in this second paragraph? So let's really break it down into common, like everyday language. What he's saying here is that in addition to it being more safe defensively to be inland, he also says you're not going to be subject to foreigners and to people who aren't like us. And this sounds very elitist. This sounds very arrogant. And I think that it was meant to sound this way. He feels that the Romans are better than anybody. And he said not only does foreign merchandise come into the city, but if you live along the coastline, you're going to get foreign codes of morals. And so you are going to change what's been done for hundreds or maybe even, several hundred years of customs, because the aliens, the foreigners, are going to change your customs, and these like pure Roman traditions aren't going to last if you had built this city out on the coastline. So what he's saying is that the coastline cities are always affected by foreigners. They have a corrupting influence. They also have a really bad moral conduct, and you're subject to moral decline. And what moral decline would be is like a decline in your values and how you live your life. And then also he says that you would also be subject to alien forms of speech, meaning that people would, invade the Latin language or something like that. Here it is right here. Alien forms of speech. So I'm guessing that if Cicero was alive in the United States in 2015, he would build a wall around the entire United States and not let any immigrants in, because he would be afraid of the mixing of cultures and alien forms of speech and moral decline and Americans losing their ancestral customs. The second thing that he is saying here is that said that the people that do live on the seaboard are always tempted to leave their cities for the hope and dream of swiftly gained wealth. And those people that do stay in the city are always wanderers in spirit, meaning that they're always dreaming of something else or something bigger instead of, contributing to the society. Okay, let's take a look at this third paragraph then. It says, how then could Romulus, with a more divine insight, have made use of the advantages of the situation on the sea while avoiding its disadvantages, than by placing his city on the banks of a river that flows throughout the year with an even current and empties into the sea through a wide mouth? So what Cicero's saying here is now we're looking into economic advantages. So now we're thinking, oh my goodness, he is smart enough to not put this city out on the coastline. However, he does put it on a very large river that's very wide, that's constantly flowing. It never dries up. It has a current that's always steady. It's never too fast or too slow. And it empties into the sea through a very wide mouth. So he's saying that the river is perfect because we're still, as Romans, want to take advantage of the sea. It says, thus this city could receive by sea the products it needed and could also dispose of its superfluous, is how you say that word, commodities. And superfluous, it means extra. So it's basically like your surplus goods, all right? So he's saying that, hey, even though we're not on the Mediterranean Sea, we're close enough to be able to get the trade from outside of Rome, and also we can send things that we have extra of to sell. By the river, the city could bring up from the sea the necessities of civilized life as well as bring them down from the interior. Accordingly, it seems to me that even then Romulus foresaw that this city would sometime be the seat and home of supreme domination. There's a question about opinion later on in this activity. Right here, he's saying that we're going to, have supreme domination over the world, and they did really. For practically no city situated in any other part of Italy could have been better able to command such economic advantages. Another toot toot, look at us, we're Roman, we're great. What is the main idea of this paragraph? That this city still has the advantages of importing and exporting goods, but it avoids all the disadvantages of living along the coastline, which would be a safety disadvantage, a disadvantage with a bunch of foreigners walking around your community, and also people having wandering minds. So this is where he really hammers it home, saying how genius the location of Rome is. He says that we still could take advantage of the sea, but we don't have all the bad things that come with it. Which, I mean, if you believe that in your heart of hearts that you don't want, your culture mixing, or you don't want another, aliens or immigrants or outsiders influencing your culture, it actually ends up being a pretty good idea that, they're just far enough away from the Mediterranean Sea to stop that, but they're close enough to be able to take all the advantages from the sea. Okay, last paragraph. Is there moreover anyone so unobservant, so not to have marked and clearly appraised the natural defenses of our city? Here's where the banks of the Tiber come in. Romulus and the other kings planned the extent and location of the city's wall with such wisdom that it followed everywhere the brink of high steep hills. So what he's saying here is that the wall is on top of the steep hills and it follows the contour of the hills, that the only access, which was blocked by a great rampart, which is a big wall, and a girt with a deep ditch. And a girt, I looked it up, is like a lateral support, so it would be like a cross member bar behind like the rampart. Okay, so you've got this huge rampart with a big horizontal beam behind it, which is the girt, and then also a deep ditch. So this is the only place that you can enter Rome, other than trying to scale the walls that are on top of the big, high, steep hills. And that the citadel, which is the main, fortress, thus fortified, rose from an ascent steep on every side and above a precipitous cliff, which is a very steep. Precipitous means very steep, and I probably would have highlighted that if I was a student. As a result, even at the terrible time when the Gauls attacked us, the citadel remained safe and uncaptured. In addition, the location which he chooses is plentifully watered with streams, and although in an unhealthful region, the site is healthful because of the hills, which they are themselves cooled by the breezes, and which also give shade to the valleys. And so what he's saying here is that, this city, although being in a kind of like a hot, like sort of place that would be considered miserable, the geography helps make it bearable because of the breezes and also the shade. What's he saying in this last paragraph? He's saying the steep banks of the Tiber, used for the city's high walls, and the walls would follow the contours of the banks. And also he said that in addition to the Tiber, there's plenty of streams and fresh water to provide the people with drinking water. He also said in this paragraph that the hills provide breezes and shade. Well, thank you, Cicero, for providing us this insight about how Rome was in a perfect location. Was it perfect? We all can pretty much say it was. Do you have to be going around saying, oh, we're the best of the best of the best because we got lucky and picked this location? All right, I think that's a little too much. You can see many cases of opinion in this document, especially saying that it's so perfect and everything is great, and if the foreigners were here, they would lead to moral decline, and we have supreme domination. These are all words that signify opinion. And although I will agree that this was a pretty perfect place to start a civilization, I also don't really agree with the arrogance here that Cicero comes off with. But then again, he's proud of his country, he's a patriot, and he wants people to know that. And so I think that's really the point of view that he's coming from here in this primary source. Well, it's time to take your quiz. I think that probably this little video and recording will probably help you do very well on it. You'll be able to use your sheet, the activity sheet that you filled in while we went over it. You're also able to use the primary source as source itself. I want you to sort of take your time and make sure you read each question carefully, and let's see if you can do better now knowing what you know.